Hi, I'm Rhiannon from the Epsom Bakehouse, and today I'll be chatting about quick and simple ways that you can reduce waste and reuse things when you're baking bread at home. If you'd like to hear more bread making tips and recipes from me, then you can sign up to my regular newsletter via the link below this video. I'm filming this in July when there's a campaign to help people reduce and eliminate plastic use in their home. Not all of these tips will be plastic free, but there'll certainly be some that help you reduce waste and perhaps even save a little bit of money when you're baking bread at home. First up is buying some of your ingredients in bulk. If you're baking lots of bread at home, you might start finding yourself going through lots and lots of flour. Fantastic. But you might also find yourself keep going out to get more supplies from the shops. And most flour is sold, especially here in the UK, in these smaller bags that are about 1 to 1.5 kilos of flour in weight. Many bakers, and especially in the last year or so when people were staying at home more, started to order their flour online. And if that's an option for you, then you can start to buy your ingredients in bulk. So this is certainly one to think about if you've got some space to store your flour at home, somewhere out of the light, perhaps in a dark cupboard, away from any light sources or damp or anything like that. You could start with buying a sack like this that's only at 4 kilos. So do buy whatever you're going to use and you'll get through before it gets past its best before date. You might save some money in buying in bulk and also reduce the amount of packaging, but also your trips out to find these supplies. For more information on where you can buy flour online here in the UK, then do check out the link below this video to another blog of mine about where to source your flour and yeast. There are plenty of independent mills and producers here in the UK that will sell to you directly and who offer a whole range of different bag sizes of flour to suit needs. Next tip is about what to do when you are rising your dough at home. It's really important if you've got dough rising that you cover over the bowl because you don't want a crust to form on the top of your dough and for it to dry out. Quick answer to this is often to try and put some cling film over the bowl or to put it directly on the dough with a little bit of olive oil to stop the cling film sticking. However, if you're trying to reduce your use of single-use plastics like that, then there are a couple of other options available. Now, the first one is plastic. I appreciate that, but this is used lots and lots of times and you can wash and reuse it. And that is a shower cap. And it just goes straight over the top of your bowl and the elastic holds it in place. And once it's finished with, you can dry out the dough if any gets stuck on it, wash it, reuse it many times in your kitchen. And that will keep your dough from forming a crust whilst it's rising. Alternatively, you could use a clean tea towel, preferably one like this that's cotton, lint-free, so it's not really fluffy, and it will just obviously drape over the top of your bowl and leave it out of the sun or any kind of direct heat source whilst it's rising. Another alternative for the bowl is if you've got a plate of the correct size, you could pop that over the top of the bowl as well, and to keep the dough from drying out. So plenty of options there that don't involve cling film to cover over your bowl whilst it's rising. Another alternative, if you have a baking tray, and say for example you've made rolls or a smaller bread, you could also put a deeper roasting dish over the top of those because they're not going to rise up particularly high, but it will just stop them from drying out whilst they are rising. So plenty of options there if you want to reduce any kind of single-use plastic when your dough is rising and you need to cover over the dough, which you will need to do to stop it drying out. Once your dough has risen and you've shaped it and you're letting it rise before it goes in the oven, you often need to put it onto a baking tray, and that will be lined to stop the dough sticking. Now, instead of using up baking paper, which you could reuse a couple of times, but eventually you probably end up putting it either in recycling or the bin, you can get these reusable baking sheets. And they can be used obviously like this on a baking tray or in a deeper pan like I was just showing to line that and put the dough on. So sometimes they're made of silicone, but they're coated and you can then put the dough on and then they can go into the oven at hot temperature to bake your dough. The great thing as well is that usually you don't need to grease them or put flour down before you put your dough on them. Once your loaf is baked at home, or indeed just any bread, often doesn't last very long. That might be just because you really enjoy eating it, but also especially homemade bread, it's not really designed to last more than a day or two. So if you don't want to waste too much, then make sure you're storing your bread correctly. So some examples might be using a bread bin like mine here, Or you could, for example, wrap up your loaf. You can get linen bread bags, or you could use, again, a clean, non-fluffy tea towel to wrap your loaf in to stop it staling. One place that I definitely wouldn't suggest putting your bread is in the fridge, which sounds surprising, but actually the moisture in the fridge can make your bread stale even more quickly. So do just bear that in mind and try to keep your bread out of the fridge if possible. If you want more tips on how to store your bread, you can read my blog on that, and the link again is below this video. So what if your bread has gone past the point where you want to really eat it and it's a bit stale now? Well, obviously check there's no mould, but there are still a couple of things you can do to use that bread. First up, you can make your stale bread into breadcrumbs, so either in a processor or literally by crumbling it up between your fingers. And you could store those, you could freeze those before you need to put them in a recipe. Or you could look up some recipes for things like croutons or kind of pita style chips that you can use with dips. And these are great because you can cut up the stale bread into the shapes you want and bake them in the oven with herbs, spices and oils of the flavours that you really enjoy. So it's a great way to use up stale bread again. And I'm filming this in summer, so I couldn't continue without suggesting one of my favourites, which is summer pudding. Using up stale bread, you have all those seasonal berries, strawberries, cherries, raspberries, really delicious stewed fruit in a delicious sauce that soaks into the stale bread. I'm probably not selling it very well if you've not had it before, but it really is a really delicious summery treat. So do again have a look if you've got some stale bread that you could use up. If you've enjoyed these tips and you'd like to start baking your own bread at home, or you think you'd like to bake more at home, then check out my live online classes where you can learn to bake everything from baguettes to ciabatta, cinnamon buns to chocolate babka, sourdough and much more. You don't need any previous bread making experience, and classes have received over 75-star reviews from previous students. It would be wonderful to welcome you along to a class. Thanks very much for joining me today. It's been great to chat more bread making tips with you. If you'd like to hear more, you can also sign up for my regular newsletter via the link below this video. Thanks, and speak again soon. Bye.